Welcome to the Everyday GSD Podcast. Today's special guest is Unser Jr. Oh shit, my phone's ringing. I just said not to, I wasn't going to have it on. Hold on. Give me 1 second.
And cutting. Not cutting.
Hello? Oh, yeah. This is everyone in Indiana that wishes they were in this room with you right now.
Yeah, okay.
Cheesy, but I had to do it. No, I'm honored that I'm sitting across from you because you're a fucking legend. I had the privilege to meet someone in your family, your father, years ago, one of my first Indy 500 races. And for those people that are listening to this show that don't know who you are, I guess just shut the show off because you shouldn't be listening to it. But I got so much I want to talk to you about, Al. You've been getting shit done, truly GSDing since you were 11 years old when you started in the race world. And you come from a race family, I know. And you've written a book called A Checkered Past. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that throughout the show. But put that for the cameras right here like this. Yep. I don't know how all that works, but we'll make sure that gets cut in there. But the show's about you, not me. So let's go, man.
Hey, well, first off, thanks for having us on, Darin. It's
absolutely.
It's a pleasure to be here, and of course, I love talking racing. So we're coming up on the 2023 Indy 500. So,
that's correct.
I believe it's the 107th running.
I think you're right.
So yeah, it's a great time of year.
And 107, it's 107th running, which means you've run approximately 20% of those races.
Approximately.
I said approximately. You know, I always make a joke about percents. You know, 62% of statistics are made up on the spot. So,
right.
But yeah, I think you've raced like 19, 20 of the Indy 500s.
Something like that. Yeah, there was in the mid to late 90s, there was a split with the IndyCar organizations and so on. And so there was 5 years there that we did not race the Indy 500.
Okay. So. And you've got a couple first places, second place, third place, fourth place. You've placed everywhere, but you've truly won the Indy 500 a couple times.
Yes.
Which I can honestly say there's not many people in the United States that can say they're sitting across from someone that's let alone won the race or raced in the race, let alone won the race, let alone won the race twice or raced in that race 10, 15, almost 20 times. So again, I'm honored that you're taking time out of your busy schedule, especially in the month of May. You know, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be all at the track, and it's going to be, you know, it's the greatest spectacle on earth.
Yes, yes, it is. Yep. It's honestly a dream come true to even pull out onto the racetrack in a race car, in an Indy car, and that dream for me came true in 1983 with my rookie season, and we got out there and started practicing, and then we qualified for the race, which was another dream come true, and then racing in the race, which is another childhood dream come true. Yeah. I mean, you know, I was 8 years old when I watched my dad win the Indy 500 the first time in 1970, driving that beautiful blue and yellow Johnny Lightning car, and so from that day forward, when I watched him win that's what I wanted to do at 8 years old. And so
well, let's talk about that.
We were fortunate to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So you're 8 years old, you watch your dad race the Indy 500, and he won it?
He won, yep.
You were 8 years old, he wins the Indy 500.
Yep.
And so are you like, you know what? This is what I want to do the rest of my life. How does this work? Actually,
how it worked was right at that time, there was a go-kart track built in Albuquerque. This is my
you're from New Mexico,
raised, yep,
correct?
In Albuquerque, and it just, when I was 8 years old, this go-kart track appeared on the west side of Albuquerque, which is where we lived, less than a mile away from my house, and so you know, I guess it was in the cards. It was in the cards for me to become a race car driver and so on, and so once I saw that go-kart track up there on West Central, I said, Dad, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to go racing. And he said, okay. And so.
And how old are you then?
When they built the go-kart track, I was 8.
Okay.
I started racing when I was 9.
Started racing when you were 9.
Yeah.
And so is this when people say they started off karting? Because I had a guess that you actually know Sebastian, an awesome Colombian race car driver who was on my show. You know, a handful.
Saavedra. Sebastian.
Yes, correct.
Yep,
the guy's awesome. What a great.
I've worked with him.
Oh my God, small world.
Gosh, it was. I'm going to say 2016 or 2014, right in that area that I actually worked with him. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. He is such a good guy.
Yes, he is.
We had a great time on the show. It was interesting because he was explaining about go-karting, and as a kid growing up, I played hockey growing up. Okay. So we would, we'd go up to Montreal and they had a beautiful go-kart track. And then, you'd pay, and I'm making this up, you'd pay your $5 and you'd go around the go-kart. But at certain times, the different carts would come out.
Right.
And those were the people like maybe a kid like you, but these carts were faster and, they were legit. So you as an 8 or 9 years old, did you just get in that cart and automatically you naturally had the talent?
I would say yes.
Okay? I love it.
I would say
Tell me more.
I loved doing it. I loved driving it. And so having my dad teaching me how to drive it, once I learned how to actually drive the go-kart and what we call the racing line,
okay,
where you enter a corner and you have an apex and you exit the corner. Once I learned how to do that, which was in very short time, okay, it just came natural. We just went and we started winning almost right away.
And so these carts that you're racing, they're not carts that they're doing 20 miles an hour. These things are cruising.
Yeah. The go-karts I ran were, when I first started, about 60 miles an hour, and then
60 miles an hour and 2 inches off the ground.
Yeah. And then by the time I ended, when I was 16, we were probably running 80, 85 mile an hour on the straightaways.
And with the little tiny tires like this.
The little tiny tires. Yeah. No suspension at all.
Yeah.
So you drive those carts today. When I drive those cars, I don't anymore, but when I was doing it, it's a one heck of a workout.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, because, you're...
Yeah. And they're beating you up, too, because they're bouncing and stuff. And so, they wear rib protectors today and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And so how long were you karting? Is that what you call it, karting?
Karting, go-karts, racing go-karts, yeah.
So how long were you doing that before you...
I did that from 9 years old to 16.
Okay.
And then I went from the go-kart to a sprint car on the dirt.
Okay.
And so that was my first professional racing, is when I drove the sprint car.
And can you explain a sprint car for those people that are that watch more hockey than racing?
Yeah, sure. So it's a single seat open wheel car.
Okay.
The engine's in front of the driver. There's a roll cage, and we race on dirt. So the cars are always sideways going around the corners.
Okay.
And yeah.
And then you're in New Mexico at this point still, or no? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So are you doing like a new and forgive me for my ignorance, but are you doing like a New Mexico circuit, or are you putting these sprint cars on a trailer and going to, West Virginia all the way across the country?
Yeah, no. We ran on Friday nights there locally in Albuquerque during the summer. And near the end of the season, so we would have races in Albuquerque. We would go up to Denver, Colorado, and race on Saturday night. So once I got my feet wet, let's say, and near the end of that first season, we started going up to Denver, Colorado, and then the second year, we spent most of our time in Denver and Phoenix, Arizona. Those two tracks. So
okay, so I'm just going to do a little math here, and again, my math might be wrong, but you started this about 8 or 9 go-karting, right? Mm-hmm. And now you're 16 years old and you're in the sprint cars. So you've been doing it about 7 or 8 years, but you witnessed your dad win the Indy 500 about when you were 8 or 9 years old.
Correct.
So is he still racing in the Indy 500 circuit while you're racing in this?
Yes.
So I'm talking, you can only imagine the cost of all this, but the travel for everyone involved in the family.
Right. Well, once I started racing go-karts, like pre-go-karting, we would spend the summer with my dad and we would go to all the races with my dad and so on. Now, once I started racing go-karts, I had a choice. Do I stay in Albuquerque and race the go-kart, or do I go and watch my dad race? And the choice was, I'm staying in Albuquerque racing the go-kart because that's what I wanted to do. So, Dad would do his traveling, and that's pretty much the way it went throughout my life. Dad was doing his racing during the summer, and I was doing my racing during the summer.
You were becoming your own race car driver.
Yes. Yeah. So Dad, he wasn't at he was at a majority of the go-kart races, but once we started racing the sprint car and started traveling around, then he wasn't at those races very often.
Okay. And then you were missing his races as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, did you ever?
Which I didn't really care about because I knew I was getting there. I knew,
Right.
Just getting to, racing as much as I possibly could and going up the ladder.
Right.
And the ultimate goal is to get to Indy when I got old enough, which is 21 years old. And
is it still 21 now?
No, it's 18.
It's 18 now, right?
Yep. But back then it was 21. And
Right.
so my birthday is in April.
Okay.
And when I was a kid, 8 years old, okay, I added up the years when I was going to turn 21 in April and that I would be running the Indy 500 in May. And it came true.
What?
It absolutely came true where I just turned 21 and that May I was racing in my first Indy 500.
And you dreamed this and visualized this and worked for it
Totally.
for year after year, knowing
Totally.
that you had to bust your ass to make sure, because
Everything fell into place, Darin. It was
because you made it fall
what
into
I
place.
call it. Well, it was a God thing. That's how I call it.
Okay.
I mean, the stars had to line up because it's a team effort. There's a lot of things that need to happen in order to race in the Indy 500.
Yeah, sponsorships, right?
Sponsorships, car owners, crews, all that kind of stuff, and it just happened to fall into place as I was going up that ladder.
Right.
It happened really quick. My curve up the ladder. So I'm racing sprint cars from 16 to 18.
Okay.
And then when I was 19, I was in what we call a Super V.
Okay. What's a Super V now?
A Super V is kind of like a mini Indy car. So Indy Lights is what they are today. But it was SCCA and it was a Volkswagen engine,
Okay.
water-cooled 4-cylinder. Okay. And it was a 140 mile an hour car. Okay. And
Just 140,
and
Justin.
SCCA, yeah. And so, so I did that when I was 19. And then I just happened to be with a car owner in Albuquerque, New Mexico. His name's Rick Gallus.
Say his name again.
Rick Gallus.
Gallus.
Yep. And he had Gallus Chevrolet. He had a car dealership there.
Okay.
And he started his racing right about that time. Now he became friends with my Uncle Bobby.
Okay.
And then he decided he wanted to own his own team. And he called me up and he said, I'm going to go Super V racing. Would you be my driver? And I said, sure, I'd love to. And so I did that when I was 19. Now, he was wanting to get to the Indy 500, okay?
As a team.
As a team, he was wanting to get himself as a car owner. His dream was the same as mine.
Because that's the big league, right? That's the big boys.
It's the top. It's the bigs.
Yeah, it's the bigs.
It's the bigs.
It's the bigs.
And so my dad actually talked him into racing the Can-Am series, which again was SCCA. A lot of good Formula One drivers got their start in Can-Am and so on and so forth. And so, which means Canadian American series.
Correct.
And they were full-bodied cars. And the reason why my dad wanted that to happen is because they were approximately about 160, 170 mile an hour cars, and they made pit stops. Okay, so the Super V, you get out there and you race for 30 minutes, and that's it. Okay?
And how many times are you going around in 30 minutes?
Well, it all depends on what track you're at.
Okay.
They're
So is it more of a
road
distance?
courses and so on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, distance oriented, which is a full load of fuel. Okay. And so Rick wanted to go into IndyCar racing right away because there was two different sanctioning bodies at that time, which was CART, which is Championship Auto Racing Teams, and then USAC sanctioned the Indy 500. Okay, so there was like an IndyCar split going on when I started in the early 80s. Okay, and so the age for a driver in CART was 18 years old, And so, but Indy
Was 21.
was 21. Okay, so Rick goes, Al, we can go race these races in kart and start my team right there. And then the next year we would go to the Indy 500.
And does that give you more experience too?
It would give the whole team more experience, all that kind of stuff. So,
Okay.
So my dad steps in and he goes, hey, why don't you do this Can-Am series, which is, it's a pretty big jump between this 140 mile an hour Super V to a 200 mile an hour car.
Yeah, 60 mile an hour difference.
That's a pretty big jump in power and
everything,
and race distance and all that kind of stuff. And so the Can-Am was like right in the middle there. And so we would have pit stops. They would the race distances weren't quite as long as the Indy cars.
And this is, you said
shorter.
You're 20 years old?
Yeah. So we did the Super V when I was 19. We did the Can-Am series, which made pit stops and gave the team time to grow without going to the bigs. Okay,
Yeah.
without going big time racing. And so we won the Super V championship, and then we won the Can-Am championship, and now the team's ready to go race Indy cars, and that's what we did. And so that's how it really all fell into place. It was totally out of my control, to be honest with you. I mean, all I had to do was go out there and win races, which
is the hardest thing to do, isn't
that's
it?
the hardest thing to do.
Only a race car driver goes, oh yeah, all I had to do is drive the car.
Yeah.
Says the guy who did the Indy 500 20-ish times.
Yeah. So it was good. It was it just like I said, what I call a God thing. So
Okay, no, I love it. And just for the third grade math people out there, so you're 8 or 9 years old, you're karting, or at 10 years old, you're karting at 60 miles an hour and 2 inches off the ground. Within 10 years later, you're doing 200 miles an hour, waiting for your birthday to come in April to turn 21 to get in the bigs. And you did it.
yes.
I guess the show's over, Justin.
We
What else do we need to
probably-
talk about here? Are you fucking kidding me?
Did I hear correctly? You won that first year? You said your rookie year.
No, I actually didn't win my rookie year during the 1983 season.
Oh,
We didn't,
boy.
we didn't win, but it was totally out of my control because we were leading a lot of races
Right.
during that year, and the car would break.
Right.
And so there was several times I was in first place, gone, checked out. All I was doing was running laps, and the engine would the car broke.
And it's so expensive, right? And I want to continue on after you're 21, but let's just talk about, you just said the car breaks, but you're racing against people or other teams at that point in your career that have a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
That have a lot of money.
Absolutely.
And of course, it's different now than it was, I'm sure, 20 years ago or 30 years ago. There's more money. There's more.
It's kind of a lot about the same.
Okay, good,
It
good.
truly is.
Yeah.
The cost back then, it cost $4 to $6 million to run a full season of IndyCar racing.
Wow.
It cost that much back then in the early 80s.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And just think about $4 to $6 million in the 80s, what that value is today. I mean, that's if you extrapolate that math, that's crazy.
Well, they've actually done a lot of, technology has changed the cars quite a lot. And so today's IndyCar is way more reliable and takes less maintenance than the IndyCar of the early 80s. Was more expensive to run.
Okay, I heard that, but I want you to say that again for the listeners. In the 80s, it cost more money to run the car because of the technology we have today.
The technology today, the reliability of the car.
Oh, the reliability.
Like let's take, for example, the engines. Okay, just the engines.
Right.
They are special built race engines in Indy cars.
Okay.
Okay. And so they need to be rebuilt on a regular basis. Okay.
Okay.
Those rebuilds, the mileage is today 2,500 miles between rebuilds.
What?
Let's say the engine runs perfectly. It doesn't have any mechanical failures, but it goes 2,500 miles, and then it has to be rebuilt to get new pieces in it. Okay. So that it won't blow up.
Right.
Okay.
So kind of like PMS on the vehicle.
Right. Okay, so back in the 80s, the mileage between rebuilds was 550 miles. So like it was just barely over the 500-mile mark.
Right.
Okay, that it had to be rebuilt. So every 550 miles, you'd have to rebuild that engine. And so they went through a lot more engines. This is just an example.
Yeah.
So along with the gearboxes, tires, all that kind of stuff.
You're dropping some knowledge that no one outside the race industry has any idea. So you're telling me if I, hypothetically, let's just say I was a race car driver and I had your skills, which let's all know this is a make believe. I'm
Hypothetical.
I'm very hypothetical, and I'm feeling real tall and proud saying it.
Okay. Okay.
So I finally make it to the bigs, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got the Indy 500 starts, in a couple days from now in May, or a couple weeks from now in May.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've got my car. That engine back then had to already be rebuilt before going into it because the race is going to be 500 miles.
Correct.
So you have to go into the race with a already
brand new, fresh engine.
And you can go around turn 2, turn 4, turn 3, 5 laps in and wreck the car or blow the engine.
Or the engine could have a failure. Sure.
And so the engine has a failure. Do you guys do an engine swap out, or the race is over for you?
Well, yeah. Once the race starts, if you have any kind of mechanical failures, you're done.
Okay. Wow. And you've been practicing and training. You finally get in there, and there's just some
or all that practice. Okay, so back in the 80s, we had 2 weeks of practice. Okay. So we would put.
What do you mean 2 weeks of practice?
2 weeks of practice
at the Motor Speedway
at Indianapolis, right. So we called it the month of May, and it was literally the month of May.
So you guys are the ones that coined the month of May for Indianapolis.
Sure, and that's the way it had been since the 40s. Okay,
because it's huge. Like right now, we're in the month of May right now, and the race is coming up in a couple weeks, and your audiobook's coming out here. If it isn't already out by the time this airs, it's coming out.
Yes.
We'll talk about that after.
Yep.
But there's events every night. There's events downtown. There's events at the track. And it's been like that for years. It's the month of May.
Right.
When people ask me like why I'm not, because I travel a lot and do podcasts or for work, Justin and I have to go places, and people are like, what's your schedule in May? I'm like, I'm going nowhere. There's hundreds of thousands of people that are coming here. Why would I leave here?
Right.
It's the month of May.
Right. So
keep going.
So back when it was the month, we had 14 days of practice. Okay. Today's practice is like 4 or 5 days of practice and qualifying.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So they're not putting in the miles like we used to.
Is that a good thing, or do you think it's
yes, it's a good thing because honestly, the cars today, they're all the same.
Because of regulations, right?
Because of regulations, it's all what we call spec racing. The cars are just identical. All the cars are identical. So
your car's not faster than mine by the specs.
By the specs, that's right. They're all the same. So and they have been for years.
So it's truly the driver
and the crew. It's all about the strategy, the driver, the crew, the team itself, not so much on the car. Where back in my day, we were getting new cars every year. They were getting innovations on the cars, and there was a March, there was a Lola, there was a Penske chassis. You could build your own cars. There was Pat Patrick built his own cars back then. Dan Gurney built the Eagles. So there was a lot of different cars when it was, and so that was expensive to build those things.
So when you're building your own car back then, if I can build my car that goes potentially a little faster than yours, and there's no one's telling me like that car's not allowed to race in this race.
Correct. As long as it fit in the box of the rules, as long as it fit in that box,
right? You
run what you brung, kind of thing.
Run what you brung.
Yeah. So there was different engines back then. There was Ilmore engine. There was a Cosworth engine. And then I can go deeper into it. There's
let's do it.
Offenhausers. There was the turbines in the late 60s. So it was all about innovation.
In a perfect world, if you could go to any year to watch a race or be in a race with the regulations that they have or the regulations that they didn't have, what year would that be? Would it be now or?
It would be this year. That's right. Absolutely. It'd be this year because, the Indy 500, as technology changed and as safety technology changed, as all of the changes that go on through racing, there's a strategy to win the race. And so today's racing, it's all about not making any mistakes because everybody is so equal. So the pits are so much more important now than they were back then. But then what was important back then was just completing the 500 miles. If your car had reliability, that was the number one thing, And so today, that's kind of like 10th or 11th on that list of most important things. They don't really even think about the reliability anymore. So
years ago when you were racing, you had to get sponsorships. So how are you doing that?
All that's the same as it was today as it was back then. You make presentations to corporations to show them, how many people are going to see their billboard if they were to sponsor the car. It's going to be on TV. And there's millions of people watching the Indy 500 worldwide. And so really the one that truly introduced sponsorships in the Indy 500 was Roger Penske.
Okay.
Him and Andy Granatelli. Andy Granatelli brought STP, which major oil additive, major company back then. And Penske brought Mark Donohue with Sunoco sponsorship, and so it built itself on that. So now here we are years later. It's a huge business model to get sponsorship on your race cars and race the Indy 500. And if you can do that and be successful with all the sponsors, you could actually make money doing this,
right?
As a car owner. As long as they don't crash.
It's awesome.
When they start crashing, then that profit margin just sinks right to nothing, So.
And the drivers, and I'm asking this. I'm not. It's not a statement. It's more of a question. Mm-hmm. The drivers, you could drive for, let's say, Penske, a team, or you could drive for Ganassi. You could go to another team if they just basically just like getting traded in baseball or in hockey, correct? Or are you? Once you start with a team, if you're with that team, and then when you're done that team, you're no longer racing.
Yeah, as a driver for myself, I had 3-year contracts that I was with, that I would sign up with Rick Gallis. I signed a 3-year contract with him. Then him and I would go out and find the sponsorship, which we came with Coors Light the first couple of years, and then I went and I drove for another car owner. His name was Doug Shearson. And he had the Domino's Pizza sponsorship, so I drove the Domino's Pizza car for 3 years. And then I came back to Rick Gallis, and I drove, we had the Valvoline sponsorship. And that's when I won my 500. That's when I won my championships.
You drank the milk.
Was with Rick Gallis. Yes, definitely drank the milk.
Tell everyone about that who doesn't know about the 500.
The milk is a tradition that started in the 50s. And so if you don't have to drink the milk, but if you drink the milk, it's a $5,000 bonus. Okay. So
look at Justin's face.
So you
drink the milk, man.
You drink the milk. Yeah. Now there was one guy, Emerson Fittipaldi, that refused on his first victory and drank orange juice.
Oh, he didn't even get the milk up there.
He said no. He said no. So back then in the day, you raced the Indy 500, and then the very next weekend we went up to Milwaukee and raced the Milwaukee Mile. And I remember him in driver intros in Milwaukee after he won the Speedway.
And drank orange juice.
up in Milwaukee, there was a bunch of signs of cows, and because it's the dairy state, right. So they announced his name in driver intros, and the whole band, woo.
That's great.
It was pretty funny, yeah. So,
Oh, I bet you have a million stories.
yeah. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Gosh, I remember my rookie year.
Okay.
This
is in the 500 world.
The
Indy series.
Indy Cars, 1983.
Okay.
Yep. And so we had 3 500-mile races. There was the Indy 500, there was the Michigan 500, and there was the Pocono 500. And the Pocono, yep.
Yeah.
Pocono 500 was in September, like in the fall. So,
Okay.
So we're coming close to the end of the season. You know, there's 16 to 18 races during the year, and so we're past halfway in the season, and so there's a few races under my belt. I'm getting comfortable with all that kind of stuff, and so
I like he says a few races under his belt. Just a few.
we're racing at Pocono, and the veterans have kind of accepted me into it. You know, Foyt and Johncock and Rutherford, Mario. You know, Dad. I mean, they all. It's.
So are you racing against your father?
Oh yeah, racing.
Oh, we're going to talk about that next.
Yep. Yeah, the first 3 years I raced against my dad. So.
Did you beat him? We'll talk about it after. We'll talk about
and
it.
no.
Okay.
Yes and no.
Okay.
So we're racing this Pocono 500, right? And we're going around there. We're racing. And it's about half distance. Something. We have a yellow, right? And I'm probably running top 5, something like that. Okay. And so under yellow, we're going around there, and AJ Foyt on the backstretch pulls up next to me, and I look over at him, and he goes like this. Which means turn 2.
Turn 2. He's got his fingers up. Anyone who's listening to this and not watching it.
Right. Turn 2 outside. And so he kind of motions. He goes, turn 2 outside. And I go, okay. So now I'm looking at the as we go through turn 2.
And how fast are you going about this time?
Real slow. It's under yellow. Under yellow. So we're running 40 to 60 miles an hour. Okay, nothing. Okay, and so I look at the racetrack. I'm thinking that there's some debris, or there's some track. There's something wrong with the track.
Right.
In turn 2, and so we go around and we get back.
I know where this is going.
We get back to the backstretch, and he pulls up next to me, and I give him the I don't know. Okay, I give him the I don't know sign, which is just putting your hands up in the air. Okay? I don't know. And he goes, turn 2 outside, like that. And so we go through there, and I'm looking, don't see a thing. So we go to the backstretch again, and I slow down, and he pulls up next to me, and I go like, I don't know again. And he just goes, kind of waves me off.
Yeah.
Okay. And so Gordon Johncock is behind Foyt, watching me and Foyt doing this communication deal.
Right.
And so next lap, Gordon Johncock pulls up next to me, and he goes, turn 2 outside, like that. And I go, I don't know. Okay. So then he waves me off. He goes, rookie, get out of here, kind of thing. Okay. So the race goes green again. We start racing, and I'm all bothered by this turn 2 outside. I keep paying attention to the track.
Yeah.
Okay. So at the end of the race, near the end of the race, we have another yellow. And so this is on my mind. What the hell is
going on turn 2
outside?
Yeah, right. Okay? I want to know.
So I finally looked up. There's motorhomes parked along the outside of the racetrack there, and there's this beautiful girl in a bikini on top of the motorhome dancing around. La, 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 la. So I finally see this, and I go, those old men, they're not racing. They're looking at the girls.
They're looking at the girls.
They're checking out the girls.
Well, because they're only doing 60 miles an hour at this point, not 200.
Yeah, well, when they slow down and have a yellow, they're not caring about anything but the girls, I'm going, this is crazy.
Oh, that's.
So
I knew that was the answer, by the way.
Yeah, I bet you did. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Who was your biggest in not necessarily in reality, but for you, a competitor that was always either someone you always like, I want to beat him, or this person's always, in my way. You know what I mean?
The one I concentrated on the most to improve my racing.
Okay, that's a nice way to put it. There we go. Such a nice guy.
Was my dad. Okay, I concentrated on my dad a lot, and Mario Andretti. Yeah, Mario Andretti. Okay, so my dad, he only raced the full season in Indy cars the first 3 years of my career. So 83, 84, and 85. And then in 86, he didn't have a full-time ride.
What does that mean?
Meaning he didn't have the car owners coming to him and go, I want you to drive my car the entire season.
And what's the reason for that, or it doesn't matter? Just it's not really.
He was the age of the drivers were getting younger.
Yeah, they're looking for just a younger.
And so the owners are looking for the younger guys. And Dad was he was at the end of his career.
Right. Great career, but
when I came on, great career.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when Dad stopped racing the full season, then I just concentrated on Mario. So there's times at Long Beach, at Mid-Ohio, at Road America, Elkhart Lake, all these different racetracks. I'd actually sit in the pits and wait during practice when the first practice session is, and they go green. I would sit in the and wait for Mario to go by, and then I'd pull out and follow him and learn what's what.
Yeah.
Mario was my guy that I pretty much concentrated on full time.
And are you guys friends today?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've been to several of his events when he comes to town, and I was fortunate to be able to have a bunch of wine with him and drink, and he's
a great guy.
He's a funny guy,
a legend.
Yeah,
that is a legend.
Well, you know what? For a legend to say he's a legend, that's pretty fucking impressive, because you truly are a legend, and and we still have so much more to talk about. I can't wait. Okay, so you're crushing the Indy 500 races, and you're in the league, and what slows you down, or what kind of hurdles did you have? What was the thing that you think that maybe changed your trajectory in the sport, whether it was for the good or to the bad?
I don't know. It was I always was fortunate enough to have great teams. Okay, and throughout my career, and so like in 1985. Okay, my third year, we led the points championship most of that season, and the second to last race was Phoenix, Arizona, on an oval, and then the season finale was in Miami, Florida. Okay, and I lost the lead of the championship at Phoenix that I had for the last 4 months. Okay, so
because it's points, right?
Points, yeah.
Okay.
So it all depends on how you finish. First gets so many points, second gets last, and so on. So there's two things that you really want to accomplish in IndyCar racing, and that first thing is winning the Indy 500, and then the second thing is winning the championship, the points championship. Okay. Those are the two things that pay the most money. Okay,
I got you.
Okay, so my third year racing, I lost the point lead in the second to last race to my dad. My dad took over the points lead.
And it was his last year racing.
And it was, we didn't know that at the time.
Okay.
But he was driving for Roger Penske. I was driving for Doug Shearson. The amount of money, the budgets. Okay, Roger Penske is the New York Yankees, and Shearson Racing is
not.
Okay.
Yeah, I got you. We don't want to throw mud.
And so it's just, we got more out of the buck than any other team did.
You were squeezing the buck.
Yeah, Doug Shearson was squeezing it bad.
Yeah.
Okay. So we go down to the final race. I end up beating my dad in the race. I finished third. He finished fourth. But I lost the championship by 1 point. Is what I'm... And
1 point.
1 point through the whole year. It was the closest in history of the championship between first and second place. And so, yeah, that's what it was like racing against my dad. He was always, his experience, back then, people would ask me if I could have anything in the world, if I could have a genie come out of the bottle and grant me a wish. That wish was the experience that my dad had. In other words, all the laps that he had run through his entire career. If I could have that, then I could go out and be really successul.
Right.
So
more successful than you already were, which is pretty fucking successful.
Yeah. So,
but I think it's. I don't know I don't know if I'm saying this right, but I feel like it's almost an honor that you made it that far, lost by 1 point, but you lost to your dad.
Yeah, we knew. Okay, so
like
once the Phoenix race was over with,
does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like I think that's fucking impressive.
Yeah, I was super proud. And
so who's better than me? My fucking dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck everyone else.
The sad thing is we had a chance to prove that we were better than dad, and we lost by 1 point. I mean, just barely missed it.
Just 1 point.
Just 1 point. So.
And so how does the points win? It's when you win, you get like so many points, and by finishing, you get so many points, or
yeah, well, first through 10th gets so many points, and let's say first gets 50 points, second place gets 40 points, third place gets 30 points, and so you go through the year adding all these points up.
Now, is this how you go? Is this how you, not for the Indy 500, but is this how you get what position you start in the next race by where your points are?
No, you qualify for every
single race.
Because
I know that we have qualifiers here in Indianapolis.
It's done on speed.
It's done on speed.
Yeah, for that race.
And weather has a big part of it, right?
Weather's a big thing. Yeah.
Especially here in Indy, man. It can be 70 degrees and cool, or it can be 105.
Yep. And with these cars going as fast as they are, the 220 miles an hour.
How fast?
The air, 220 miles an hour. The air is huge. The density, the air temperature, the humidity, all of that plays into it.
220 miles an hour. Everything plays.
And you turn left.
And you turn left.
You go through the corners that fast.
What's your favorite on the track? What's your favorite turn?
Actually, they're all the same.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
What makes it not your favorite turn is the best way to put it. Your least favorite is which way the wind is blowing. Okay? And so if the wind is blowing from, say you have a headwind on the front straightaway and a tailwind on the back straightaway, you'll turn into turn 1 and it'll turn in really quick because you've got a lot of air on the front of the car.
Right.
Okay. And then as you go through turn 2 and you start getting on the backstretch, that wind starts coming from behind and you lose grip. So it all depends on which way
the wind is a big factor.
Wind's a big factor. Yeah.
So, because obviously these cars are going so fast and there's a lot of accidents, and unfortunately, I should say fortunately, there's a lot of protective gear now that was a lot different today than it was in the past. But sometimes I see these wrecks, and I'm blown away that anyone can, let alone live. Sometimes they get out of the car, and unfortunately, we have lost race car drivers here at Indianapolis, and to all of them who didn't make it.
Yep.
But it's interesting to me because I feel like at the 500, I feel like I see more wrecks on turn 4, and I don't know why I feel that way.
Right.
Because I'm just a fan.
There's not.
There's not. No, there's not. I had this
same.
conversation with Sebastian. Yeah, and it wasn't on air like this. I said to him, I go, turn 4 to me is the most dangerous, the dangerous turn. He goes, it's the same as turn 3.
Yeah.
And turn 2.
Turn 2.
And that's why I was asking you, not that I didn't believe Sebastian, because I know he's a great driver as well.
They're all the same.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. What motivated you to write a book? And again, I'm just going to put this up
A
here.
lot of it, yep.
Checkered past.
Checkered past, okay. A lot of it was because I had never came out with an autobiography. That's basically what the book is about my life, okay, on and off the track. And so we got into COVID, okay, and I thought, okay, the whole thing's shut down now, so why don't we just take a online course on becoming an author. Okay. which lasted,
the online course,
the
one day.
Course, well,
you dropped out like I did.
It went a couple weeks and I dropped out. Yeah. I discovered real quick that I was not an author.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's when I asked for Jade Gerse's help. So he's my co-author with the book and so on. So he did a brilliant job, as far as writing it and so on. And so that's what made me decide to do it. And I just got real truthful. I've had my stints with the law and alcohol and so on. And I wanted to basically share the truth and tell my story.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I felt that if I could help one person with substance use disorder, then it was worth going out on the limb and telling the truth.
Right.
Okay. And so I really didn't, I had these issues while I was racing.
Okay.
But they were under control. And so, with the disease, with alcoholism and drug addiction and so on, the longer it goes on, the worse it gets. And so when it really got bad with me was I was pretty much at the end of my career in racing. And so like my first DUI that I had already retired from racing and been retired from racing for several years. So.
Okay, so you had your first DUI, which is driving under the influence.
2011.
2011. But you were no longer racing.
No, I'm sorry. Sorry. It was 02. No. I'm trying to remember.
You know what?
I'm trying.
It doesn't matter. You had your first one. You were done racing.
I had retired from racing.
Yeah.
It was 07. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. 07.
It was 07.
And this is going to be a dumb question, but I want to ask it because I'm sure there's people out there. Because you have to be 21 to race at the time you were racing. Now it's 18. Mm-hmm. So let's just say you were still racing and you were 30. Okay. And you got a drunk driving and lost your license. Are you allowed to race?
No. You are not allowed to race.
So it's not a dumb question. You made it your whole career.
You have to have a valid driver's license. Every driver out there in any series, whether it be NASCAR, Formula One, IndyCar, IMSA, World of Outlaws, and the reason why, Darin, is insurance.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Insurance. You have to have a valid driver's license to drive race cars. Absolutely. So,
Justin, do you have a question? I see him over there.
I'm like, that is a damn good question. Something I've never ever thought about.
Well, and when I asked it, kind of thinking it was a stupid question because I have a lot of stupid questions. I really thought that was going to be a stupid one. I thought you were going to be like, "No, man, you don't need a fucking driver's license to drive a car 55 miles. You need one from 55 miles an hour, but not one on a track doing 220 miles an hour."
Yeah.
Wow.
Now that was a big thing when I was 16 years old. Okay. And first started driving my sprint car.
I got to interrupt you, and I shouldn't interrupt you, but I have to. Imagine if you go take your license at 16 years old, and you've been racing cars since you were 8, in the karts and all this, and you're finally ready to go into not the big, but you're ready to go, and you go in the drive. You're in the driver's, whatever that guy's called, the guy that gives you your license, and he's had you parallel park and you do everything, and all of a sudden he fails you. You're like, I drive cars 150 fucking miles an hour, man. You're fucking killing me.
To let you know, I aced my driver's
I bet you did.
I aced it. I aced my driver's test, all that stuff. And actually, I got my driver's license when I was 14 and 8 months. is when I got my driver's license
Okay.
back then.
Back then, yeah. So you were smooth sailing.
I was good.
Yeah.
So, the local racing there in Albuquerque, when I went to my first race on that Friday night, driving sprint cars, all the drivers got together, felt I was too young because I looked 12.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
you still look like you're 30.
I look, well, thank
You
you.
have such a
you.
baby face.
Thank you. I look 12, man. I didn't look old enough to be driving these real race cars. So all the drivers got together and they wanted to stop me from racing. And so
Because you were so young and they're pissed.
because I was so young and they thought I was dangerous, that I was going to be dangerous because I'm 12 years
is that a
old, like,
picture?
you know? No, that's not me.
It
No.
says Unser Jr.
Yeah, no, that's not me. Who is that? Who is that? That's one of our young drivers with the team I was with last year, Future Star Racing.
Okay.
So that's one of our young drivers.
Come on, Google. You're fucking letting us down over there.
So they tried to stop me from racing, and they all decided, okay, let's go ahead and let him do some hot laps, and let's let him.
What does a hot lap mean? Like live?
Practice,
Okay.
just practice, and if he does okay, then we'll let him continue to race. If he does anything stupid or makes mistakes, then we'll just stop him from racing that night. Okay, so I did really well, okay, that night. Didn't get in trouble, did everything right, all that kind of stuff. The drivers during the week, they all got together and they didn't want me racing. So they voted to stop me from racing, period. Okay. And they blamed it on insurance. Okay. And so, because they didn't want to take responsibility. So the local driver club, okay, blamed it on insurance. And my dad went and said, look, what does it take? Because the local club said you had to be 18 years old to drive race cars.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm following you.
They were
I'm
trying
tracking.
to, and so they were trying to blame it on insurance and so on. And the only thing that insurance required was a valid driver's license, which I had. So we went and we
And they're blown away because you look like a 10-year-old.
Absolutely. So, it's, why are you guys trying to stop him from racing?
Because they knew you were fucking going to beat him.
They probably did. But so, they ended up having to, basically we forced them to let me run.
So did they, was it like unanimous? They all voted against you, or was it just like the mean girls in the back?
It was the mean girls in the back.
Yeah.
It was, you have to be 18 and so.
Because I suck and he's going to beat me.
Yeah. That's what it was. Really.
Yeah. So I want to go back to your book a little bit. Your audiobook's either going to be out right now or it's going to be out here in a few days.
Yep.
How hard was
I had fun making the audiobook.
Okay, I did not.
Yeah.
We had this conversation at dinner.
Yeah, it was very time consuming and I hated it at the time.
Okay.
But then, like we discussed at dinner.
Yeah.
But now that it's over with, I had fun.
Okay.
I had fun doing it.
So am I going to...
I'll probably do it again, to be honest with you.
Did you hear that, Justin?
If I write another book, if I come out with another one, I'll probably make an audio myself. Yeah.
Okay. Am I going to do an audio of the next book, Justin?
Yep.
Look at my face.
See, he's
Look at my face.
Yeah.
If you do another, I don't know how you said it was a good experience, but Justin's been kind enough to work with me on my projects, obviously, and we need to make sure you guys get connected because he makes it much easier. Oh, I got to get closer. Oh yeah, he always that's what I mean. He's here for me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm over
there
here.
This is what's going on.
That's why I hated the audiobook. They're like, do this, do that. Like, shut the fuck up.
Leave me alone.
Leave me alone. Yeah. That's interesting because in my mind, when I finished that, I called my wife and I said, she goes, how did it go? I go, I'll never do this again.
Right.
And I really meant that at the time. And then when I started working with Justin, I think my whole mindset changed on that because it's about how you feel when you're doing it. And, I'm not the best reader, let alone reading something, it's just tough, man. It was tough.
Yeah.
What's the best message that you think? Obviously, you wrote this to share your experience, to let people know that if they need help, they should get it.
Right.
We talked about that at dinner, so I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yep.
But share me a couple of stories in here that, if you wouldn't mind. You mentioned that you got your first DUI after you were racing, and walk me through some of that process where you're like, you didn't learn your lesson and you kept going, or like where are we at?
I kept.
If you mind,
I kept going. Not at all. It was a difficult road. I think the hardest thing for me to do was admit that I had a problem, because really I was saying, I can quit anytime I want. I'm okay, so on and so forth, for many years. So the toughest thing was actually admitting that I did have a problem and to ask for help. And then as I've been going through the journey, there's definitely help out there. And if you think you have a problem, start asking questions, get help, therapy, what have you, And then, you really have to have total abstinence, in order to really get to the real issues of what's causing you to have these problems with drugs and alcohol, because you're really trying to escape something. I was doing that,
Right.
And so rather it be PTSD or rather it be a loss of something or grieving and so on. I mean, there's a lot of issues for myself. I had issues with grieving and, losing stuff. Most of my career, I was blessed with success. And then at the end of my career, it was nothing that I saw was just problems. And so it got difficult. It got hard. And so I went, I finally asked for help. And then I discovered that once I got the help, I've been to probably 3 or 4 different rehabs.
Okay.
Staying in the rehabs and so on, which was really good for me. And then coming out of the rehab, it's so difficult. It's so hard. So I thought the hard part was asking for help and so on. And then I got the help. And then I discovered that the real work is when you leave that rehab, that safe environment,
right?
And you go back to your own environment and daily life and that sort of thing, and that's really when the real work begins. And so, what's so important is a support group because you can't do it on your own, but you really have to do it on your own. Okay.
Right.
So
it's a mix.
So it's up to you to decide that you want to do this, but you need that support system. You need that support to help you with that. And so, like, when I first talked to my dad about all this kind of stuff, and I was asking him for his help, and so he didn't know anything about the disease or anything like that, and so he made some calls and came back to me a couple days later, and I go, "Did you find me some help?" And he goes, "Well, I called the professionals and they said you have to do it on your own." And I go, "Dad, I'm asking for your help." And he goes, "No, you got to do it on your own." So he was half right. But he was half right. He was
half wrong too.
But he was half wrong too. So, and it takes a lot of time.
Right.
It takes a lot of time. My dad and both I did too. I thought I could go into a rehab for 28 days, like the movie. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
28 days. Yeah. Go into this and come out and you're fixed. Well,
that's not true.
No, not at all. Not at all. And so I was under the impression it was like a body shop. You take your car to the body shop and it gets fixed. It gets fixed and it comes out, and all is well. And that's just simply not the case. And it's a daily thing,
Right.
and then I discovered, really, I was introduced to God through my issues, my problems, okay, and going to the rehabs and so on, and the 12-step program and all that kind of stuff, and I was introduced to God, and so I needed that, and then later on it wasn't taken. I still had my issues, as the years went by and so on, and I kept getting in trouble and all that kind of stuff, and then I came and I moved close to where my mom is. My mom is a huge Christian, reborn Christian, all that kind of stuff, and so I decided to give that a shot when I was taking her to church, and I'm looking around and I'm going, I never gave Jesus a chance,
Right.
I've been believing in God and all this kind of stuff, but I'm doing something wrong. And so when I became reborn again, when I started believing in Jesus, that all changed, and so it really has been the one thing that has helped me the most as far as a relationship with God. I always believed in God,
Right.
and that sort of thing, but I didn't have a relationship with Him. And what provided that, because I see God as He's everywhere all at once, and so He's just so big and so on, and I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Where Jesus is that halfway between He's God and man.
Okay.
And so I couldn't reach out and in my belief and my faith and grab the right hand of God, but I could reach out in my faith to grab the right hand of Jesus, because it's real, it's there.
Okay.
And so once that happened, that opened up a whole new belief system and so on, and so my life just got so much better. I wasn't lonely, I wasn't alone, I wasn't telling myself I was this loser all the time.
Right.
Once I turned my world over to Jesus, He died for my sins, and the one thing, I couldn't forgive myself. That was one of the things, and I kind of went, well, if Jesus can forgive me and He died on the cross for my sins, then I should be able to forgive myself. I mean, so that helped an awful lot. So
Right.
So what that became really, there's and in the rehabs and so on, it's a toolbox, okay? And there's a lot of tools that you use to help keep you with sobriety and not be an addict. A tool is the telephone, okay? A tool to call and say, I'm really having a bad time here, and your support system. Jesus became another tool that I could use to help with this addiction. And
Right.
so today I am addiction free.
That's awesome.
Totally addiction free.
That's awesome. You can't hear the people, the fans, because they're behind, but they're clapping for you.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
yeah. And so,
because you had a lot of sins, you said.
Yeah, a lot of sins. I lived in Vegas for a while, and man,
Yeah.
that's Sin City. It is Sin City without a doubt.
Yeah.
And so,
do you have any regrets?
no, not at all.
Good.
The way I'm sitting here today, because God, that's His plan. That's what it is. So
Right. So people are going to read this book, and I'm sure that message that you just said, which is, it's deep, but it's very powerful, but it's also very human.
Absolutely.
And people are going to read this book or listen to it on the audio.
That would be great. The audio would be great.
Which I'm an audio person.
Yeah, because I end up sounding like my Uncle Bobby. I even sing in the audio.
Get the fuck out of here.
I sing in the audio.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Are you a singer?
No. Are you kidding?
Oh, shit. No, but, that's great.
But yeah, I mean, that's the reason for the book.
That's
really
the reason
is to show that, yes, all things can be totally against you. I mean, it was really dark time in 2012 on my 50th birthday when we talked about, turning 21. It was so exciting and all that kind of stuff. And you turn 21 in April and go race the Indy 500 in May. When I turned 50 in April of 2012, I was ready to commit suicide. I literally had the gun out on the table every night. I was alone. I mean, I had been going through all these rehabs and nothing was taken, nothing was working. And, it was dark time for me. And I expressed that in the book.
Right.
And truly, how did I get there? How did I get there on my 50th birthday where no one would call me? I mean, the only ones that told me happy birthday was my mom and my oldest son, Al.
Wow.
No one else called and wished me happy. No.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. I had mistreated a lot of friendships and a lot of people and all that kind of stuff. And
now we're 10 or almost 11 years later.
Yep. And
you're healthy and happy.
Healthy and happy. I've got a beautiful bride, Norma.
She is. I love her.
And so, this birthday, my phone's ringing off the hook. My texts and emails and all that, Facebook, and the future is just so bright.
Today's her birthday, by the way. Happy birthday, Norma.
Oh yeah, we normally don't say the actual days, so don't say your day because obviously this is coming out on the 15th.
Well, I celebrate my birthday for a long time.
Yeah, good for you.
Not just a day.
Yes.
Several months.
So for the record, her birthday is not May 15th, but let's just say it's around then. And you just celebrated your birthday. 61, correct? Or 60?
61.
61.
61.
Yeah. It's
never thought I'd make it this far.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine, especially,
we call him vintage.
Vintage. I say a legend, you say vintage. Tomato. No, it's interesting because when you can write a book like this, and I told you before, I'm not a big reader. I'm an audio guy, but I did flip through and read some parts of it. And I think if anyone, first of all, if you like racing, you have to read this book or listen to it. But if you want to just hear an amazing story of a family of a gentleman who's a legend and when I say, because it's interesting living in Indiana, with the 500, like. If you've never been to the Indianapolis 500, there's not. As a fan, I can't even explain it. I mean, the track itself is so big. You can put I forget how many football fields, the Vatican, everything inside. There's a map. If anyone wants to Google it, who's listening to this, Google what fits inside the Indianapolis 500 track. It'll blow your mind.
Right.
And then fill that with 300,000 to 500,000 people, and then have cars going 200 plus miles an hour. For 500 miles, and people are having, live music and parties, and it's
an event.
It's a spectacle.
An event. That's right. And it is, just to be real simple, it is the largest stadium of any kind in the world.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's the largest sporting event, single sporting event in the world ever.
Attendance.
In attendance.
In attendance, right.
Yeah.
Because it's the largest stadium.
Yeah.
The next to it can seat over 350,000 people, okay?
In the bleachers.
And right.
Just to be clear.
Right. It can seat over that, okay? And the next largest stadium can hold 110,000.
Yeah, and that stadium.
In the world.
Yeah, in the world.
Soccer, football, baseball, whatever it is.
Yeah. One of my friends from Costa Rica came to visit me, and I got to bring him to the Indy 500 track, or I should say MotoGP. He wasn't he didn't go to the race. and he was just like looking around, and his name is Adolfo, and he was just like, this is the coolest thing ever. He got to kiss the bricks, and I was like, you got to come when his cars are racing. Yeah. What's your favorite race car movie? Or I should say
race car movie.
Yeah, I guess it's race.
Favorite race car movie.
Yeah.
I liked Rush a lot.
Rush.
Yeah.
And what was the reason?
Yeah. It seemed to be more real. Ron Howard did a great job. He directed it.
Okay.
He did a great job with how to have the audience feel the racing. And then, of course, with Niki Lauda and James Hunt, they were just totally opposites of personalities.
Right.
James Hunt was a hell of a partier and all that kind of stuff. And Niki Lauda was just the other opposite way, a technician on everything. And so it was really well done. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I also like Ford versus Ferrari. That was really well done too.
My friend Mark Stoner, that's one of his favorite movies for the car racing movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it really true stuff. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. Hey, listen, I know you're extremely busy. I want to thank you for coming on the show. I want to thank you for, first of all, sharing your story on the show, but sharing the story in this book, A Checkered Past. Again, I can't express enough for anyone that, even if you don't like racing or don't know anything about racing, you need to get this book. But you need to hear this guy's story because it's fucking good. It's very impressive. And I do have a little gift for you.
Okay.
Because you truly are an everyday GSD person who gets shit done and has been since you were a kid. So
Cool.
I got over here a hat for you, and right here's a hat.
Awesome.
And you'll probably end up giving it to your lovely wife.
Probably.
And then of course I've got an everyday GSD shirt right here.
Cool.
And I
love it.
I truly appreciate you. And we've got a lot of events coming up in the month of May, and hopefully I'll be able to share a couple of those events with you. But thanks for coming
Absolutely.
on. Thanks for coming on a show, and I'm looking forward to seeing you this month because it's the month of May, brother.
That's right.
Thank you.
This is May.
This is May.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Everyday GSD podcast. Episodes come out on the 1st and 15th of the month. If you want to watch people or listen to people that Everyday GSD, please download and subscribe wherever you listen or watch the Everyday GSD podcast. Everyday GSD.